Hello, and welcome to Gaspar's History Podcast. This is Gaspar, and I've got a very special story for you today, or at least I think it's special. Today's story takes us back to May 14th, 1943. Europe remains under Nazi control, but Hitler's war machine is slowly getting backed into a corner, and we all know what happens when a wounded rat is cornered. Speaking of rats, let's give a shout out to the desert rats who had just mopped up Erwin Rommel's vaulted Africa Corps in Tunisia on May 13th, 1943, and it was welcome news across East Anglia's air bases. How many of you remember Avalon Hill's board game, Africa Corps? It was my first Avalon Hill board game that launched many more. In our last mission, the Steel crew flew to Mayotte, France, under heavy escort, which was a relief to the boys. It was a welcomed milk run. Today, they are off to Kiel, Germany, which is a coastal city that sits on the opposite side of the Danish peninsula, which is going to require some extended flying time in Luftwaffe airspace. But do not fret. The boys of the 306th are bringing some friends with them today, and I think you're going to be quite surprised on who their friends are. Some of you may be thinking, you know what I'm talking about, but I am thinking you just might be surprised. With that, let's kick in to episode 19, Short Snorter. Tech Sergeant Leon Bamforth was in his usual top turret gun position. The interphone bantering turned to shouts. Bogey, 5 o'clock. Walt Piotrowski called it in. Bandit, 7 o'clock. James Smoot added in. Bamforth did not have to remind the boys, heads up. They all knew what to do. And the new guy, Jessup, well, he was sitting back to back with Stokowski. So the veteran literally had his six. Leon had aspired to become a pilot, but his eyesight was just not quite good enough. He was good with engines and mechanics, so he found himself flying. Now he was the engineer and the quarterback of defense on the Meat Hound today. He had a magnificent view of endless skies, blue skies, with black puffs of smoke and little black dots that grew bigger each second. Let's do a quick check-in on the crew and then get back to the action. Lieutenant Jones is the pilot, and Lieutenant Steele is in the co-pilot seat. Lieutenant Carl Vaho is the navigator and is with Tech Sergeant Hull, the toggler, in the nose. Tech Sergeant Bamforth is the engineer, and Staff Sergeant Piotrowski is in the ball turret gun. Sergeant Jessup is on the right waist, and Staff Sergeant Stokowski is on the left waist. In the tail is Staff Sergeant Smoot. All right, let's keep going now that you know where all the players are on the plane. The Meat Hound was flying like an eagle, grand and effortless, her big eyes focused on Miss Patricia, who was a sight for sore eyes, as Czech and Cassidy kept her on point and in the lead element, low squadron. The squadron was 5 minutes from the bomb run, and there was a little heat in the kitchen. Leon Bamforth and the rest of the crew could see the big, beautiful babies escorting them. The big, beautiful babies had put on some weight overnight. Gaspar, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the escort. It was one like we have never seen before. The escort was 21 B-24s. Today's mission was a maximum effort, and the 8th Air Force was sending planes everywhere at once. The Meat Hound was part of the Kiel group, which was made up of 136 B-17s and 21 B-24s. I looked to see if Jimmy Stewart was flying one of the B-24s. He was not. It is still a little early in the war, but a little bit before his time. Yesterday, the bomb group had Spitfires and P-47s. Today, they have 21 B-24s. Something seems a little askew. Tech Sergeant Bamforth had a pit in his stomach. It was not the result of the B-24 escorts, but rather the breakfast the bomb group was fed before they left. Leon was now 3 hours into the mission, and he and the boys were starting to cramp. The rank food was going through them, and let me quote General Patton, like shit through a goose. The Meat Hound's crew described the food as a real bitch. The next line in the mission report reads, quote, "Get something to clean the plexiglass nose." When you put those two comments together, back to back, your mind can come up with some pretty interesting scenarios. There was no time to lament on the food. The Luftwaffe had arrived, and Leon found himself leading the Meat Hound's defense, calling to the crew from his bird's eye view. Another wave of attacks commenced, and a black Focke-Wulf 190 dove on the Meat Hound from 7 o'clock high. The Focke-Wulf was screaming towards the Meat Hound, focused and determined for a kill. Tech Sergeant Bamforth, in his Sperry top turret, had an excellent view as the attack commenced. He was not surprised. He was, in fact, waiting. Bamforth dialed in the Focke-Wulf's wingspan, 34 feet, then the distance. He knew the Focke-Wulf would have to make arced fire so that the cannon rounds would cross the path of the Meat Hound. Leon would have to do the same, hoping the Focke-Wulf would cross into his arced firing pattern. The solid black Focke-Wulf throttled up, and her radial engine lunged into an attack at distance. Lieutenant Jones called for evasive action, and it was most likely steel on the primary controls due to the position of the Meat Hound, with Logan and the DFC to her right. Either way, Jones and Steele bobbed and weaved. The Meat Hound's engines were steady and humming without a glitch. The crew could see the burning phosphorus of the Focke-Wulf's 20mm cannon rounds as they zipped past the nose of the Meat Hound. The pilot's evasive action did not help Bamforth, but he was used to it. The Meat Hound's twin 50 caliber machine guns erupted, and the pilots thought they were listening to a Sunday hymn. Oh, what a sweet sound it was. Tech Sergeant Bamforth stayed on his trigger, and he could see the 50 caliber bullets spark and flash off the silhouette of the Focke-Wulf's black paint. The Focke-Wulf 190's guns fell silent as the chorus from the top turret guns got louder. The enemy aircraft went into a spin and flashed by the rear of the Meat Hound as Smoot and Petrowski watched her fall to the earth. Tech Sergeant Bamforth had once again saved the Meat Hound from danger. Sergeant Jessup got to see his first kill as the Messerschmitt spun past him. Yep, Jessup saw a Messerschmitt, but others saw a Focke-Wulf. The Luftwaffe was now making runs on the 306th Squadron, just as they were getting ready for the bomb run. The Meat Hound was 5 minutes from the submarine pens, and she could already see the heavy, thick, black smoke bellowing from the harbor. Thick, black smoke was a good sign. It usually meant something of value was burning. As the Meat Hound started her bomb run, the crew watched as B-24s started to fall from the sky, and the crew chanted, "Get out, get out." Tech Sergeant Hull toggled the Meat Hound's bombs and watched as the submarine pens and harbor were, and I quote, plastered. The Luftwaffe was not quite done and had the Meat Hound's attention. Enemy 109 flew past Captain Czech's Miss Patricia, giving her gunners a very short window from which to shoot. It then passed between Logan and the Meat Hound. Sergeant Jessup had to check his fire as not to shoot into the DFC. That was close, Jessup thought. Crazy bastard. Lieutenants Jones and Steele banked the Meat Hound into a vector home, and they counted 4 B-24s and 2 B-17s going down in flames. The Luftwaffe's attacks continued, and then, just like that, they stopped. The crews went on flak alert, but it was light. It appears Jerry had been caught a little short to handle all of the activity that was thrown at them today. Jerry did not even try to bomb the bombers today. There was no chase home, just a smooth sailing, and the Meat Hound's engines obliged. The 306th brought back all of her aircraft, but sadly, that could not be said for the other bomb groups or their fighter support. The 306 was the last bomb group through the target area, so maybe the Luftwaffe just did not have anything left by the time the Fiery Phantoms, aka Grim Reapers, showed up. The B-24s were held in high regard by the 306th, and they appreciated them being the escort. They all recognized their sacrifices. Lieutenant Paris in the 368th commented, "Too many bombers for fighters, and the fighters scared easy." Is losing 6 aircraft really scaring easy? I suppose it's all perspective. Lieutenant Robinson's crew in the 368, they commented, "The B-24s caught it again," recognizing the tough position and mission the B-24 squadrons were getting. Lieutenant Wheeler's crew in the 369th said the B-24s are better escorts than fighters. That, my friend, is high praise indeed from fellow flyers who knew exactly what they were up against. I wonder if the crews and the airmen of the B-24 squadrons ever received that feedback. Sergeant Jessup recorded in his journal it was a 7-hour flight. The bombing was good, 50 enemy aircraft, engineer shot down an Me-109. I guess that Fokker was a Messerschmitt. The Meat Hound's crew also commented that the breakfast was a real bitch. Captain Check's crew simply described the breakfast as chow failure. A couple of the pilots commented that the boys were getting tired. Tired or not, they had some celebrating to do. The bomb group claimed 9 enemy aircraft, which was a pretty good haul, so it was worth a celebration. Leon Bamforth was not going to buy any drinks tonight. He was the man of the hour. Leon had his short snorter in his pocket, just in case he needed it. Gaspar, did you say short snorter? What is a short snorter? A short snorter was a collection of bills taped together, often signed by friends. When buying drinks, an airman who could not produce his short snorter was expected to buy a round for those who had theirs. In some cases, the person with the shortest short snorter or the fewest signatures would end up buying the drinks. The short snorter in our story today is Tech Sergeant Leon Bamforth's 1936 Series A U.S. $1 bill. Leon's dollar bill had several signatures on it and names that are integral to our story, along with some names that we just cannot make out. Leon's short snorter was sent to me by his nephew, who has been instrumental in me being able to research and tell the stories of these men and women. The dollar is very hard to read, so I sent it to my daughter to see if she could use some of her computer imaging voodoo to extract more names out of the dollar. But so far, we're not having much luck. Here is what we are able to extract off of Leon's short snorter. The name at the top on the back side of the bill says Bayforth. So Leon's name right out of the gate is misspelled. Wouldn't that be embarrassing if that was my Uncle David who misspelled it? More to come. Under Leon's name, the bill is dated 11/28/1942. That date puts Leon and the crew in Scotland or England just after they brought the sweet pea, honeybee and pot, over from the United States. The crew had not been assigned to Thurley in the 306th. That comes early in December. So that puts Bamforth in Scotland just before being sent to Thurley. After the date are the initials D.A.S. We have no idea what that means. And I sent that out to a historian, author friend of mine, and he did not have any ideas either. But then it hit me as I was staring at it all. What if D.A.S. is actually David Addison Steele, my uncle? Maybe my uncle did write it and misspell Leon's name. The top of the dollar is all in similar ink as if it were written all at the same time. After the opening and the date, this is what the order of names and signatures appear to be. D. A. Steele, A. R. Carlson, G. Reynolds, O. L. Hamilton, W. E. Hull, Eddie Stokowski, Piotrowski, R. W. Jones, James Smoot, R. J. Stymax. Those names in that order make sense, other than Eddie Stokowski, which then leads one to believe Stokowski was active earlier in the squadron than I first believed. We do know that Eddie Stokowski has been a regular on the Meat Hound and flying with this crew. We also know by the time of this mission, Carlson has been killed, Reynolds is a POW, Hamilton has been wounded and is no longer flying. After R.W. Jones, there appears to be 6 more names on the bill. We're going to need some better technology or divine intervention to decode them. I do believe one of the names is Ben Gordon with the 306th. Tech Sergeant Gordon will finish his 25 missions in July of 1943, so that puts him in the bomb group at the same time. Trying to find out more about Tech Sergeant Ben Gordon and the bomb group in the Echoes magazine list. And all I could find was that the magazine lists him as deceased in 1969 at a very young age indeed. The short snorter is a piece of history that I wanted to share with you, and now you can get that trivia question correct in your next match. More importantly, this series and podcast has been able to bring to light a part of history and the daily interactions these young men were having with each other. Thanks again to Sean for sharing this with me and allowing me to bring it to all of you. Whether Leon's short snorter has a direct connection to you because of the names that are on it, or an indirect connection because one of your relatives had a short snorter. I wonder where my Uncle David's short snorter is at. Either way, I am glad you are listening and learning about the young men and women of the greatest generation that sacrificed their lives for liberty. Let us not also forget, when I say sacrifice, I also mean that even with survival of this terrible conflict, they were all changed and impacted by its effects. That night, the Meat Hound and her crew celebrated another successful mission. But their next morning was once again cut short by get up, you are flying. And tomorrow, the crews are going back to Germany. With that, do not ever forget that the past is never dead. It's not even past. And just think of the things you may find when you are looking for something else. Gaspar, out.